Hello everyone, hope you all doing good so far, and welcome back to another weekly episode of the Monograph presentation. If you haven't, please like and subscribe to get notified for more awesome contents from models of HCI. Today our group, David, Towson, and I bring you the monograph from Professor Sutcliffe, Designing for User Engagement. Here is a short introduction of Professor ALISTAIR Sutcliffe. He is a Emeritus Professor of System Engineering, Schools of Computer Science and Business, University of Manchester in United Kingdom. He is also the leading authority on human factors in safety critical system, requirements engineering, and multimedia user interface design. And he has authored 6 books and over 200 publications on human-computer interaction, requirements engineering, software, and domain knowledge reuse. In Psychology of User Engagement section, Sutcliffe claims that user experience is a concept which is frequently discussed but not easy to define. Indeed, user experience has been associated with a wide variety of meanings, ranging from traditional usability to beauty, hedonic, and effectively, and experimental aspects of technology use. Before jumping into the model of the cognitive factors influences user engagement, we need to first understand proactive inhibition. Proactive inhibition or proactive interference is an aspect of interference in learning and is a concept that describes the increased difficulty of learning or remembering a set of words after the set had been learned in a previous different context. It applies to free recall and associative or least learning procedures of accessing memory. An example of proactive inhibition applies would be when you drive home from work and realize that you have accidentally followed your behavior and drove to your old place. You forgot that you have moved to a new place the last day. And another example would be trying so hard to remember your best friend's new phone number on top of the old ones, which you could easily remember in the past few years. The cognition behind user engagement is summarized in Figure 2.2. Emotion influences judgment, but judgment and experience from interaction also affects our emotions and memory. Sutcliffe claims that we tend to remember events after unpleasant incidents more effectively than events beforehand, which are also known as proactive inhibition. Based on the model of cognitive factors influencing user engagement, Sutcliffe summarized that high-quality aesthetic design will lead to pleasure and mild arousal. Pleasing and enjoyable user experience will lead to positive mood, while negative emotions tend to enhance memory of the situations. A bad user experience will lead to emotions of frustration, anxiety, and even anger. Poor design, errors, and difficulties will lead to bad mood, which will further lead to future judgment of the product and the related products. Every time when we encounter an unfamiliar user interface or framework, we tend to act using the general common sense knowledge or heuristics. A typical heuristics method would be trial and errors, meaning we could take some steps and learn from the results, like push a new buttons or drag the image icons around the interface and see what happens. In most of the cases, we have some idea about the UI, so we apply previous knowledge to plan our actions, which is also known as the declarative knowledge, if-then rules that could be applied as a rule level described in the Rasmussen's KRS framework, knowledge, rules, skills framework. Sutcliffe summarized that the rule and knowledge level are more arousing when we reason and think more actively, which means skills operation, like driving a car, walking a dog, will be the least arousing of the KRS level, since they do not require much of the thinking and reasoning process. The challenge in user engagement is to hold the user's interest and maintain arousal by interaction, which varies in difficulty and familiarity between uh, Rasmussen's levels. Sutcliffe introduced the flow by taking the gameplay as an example in a monograph that almost every game would require some kind of skilled operations, which have different levels of difficulties. In order to avoid the players getting bored once they master the easy skill operations, the game always allows users to manually adjust the game difficulty, or the game will automatically adjust it for them as the players progress the game. Flow is the sense of engagement and being absorbed in an interactive experience. It describes the relationship between the challenge and difficulty on one hand and ease of operation and achievement on the other. If operating a UI is too difficult, we will, we will get frustrated and discouraged and may give up, leaving us with negative emotions and adverse memory of the experience. In contrast, if operating the UI is too easy, then we get bored, excitement or arousal decreases, and we turn our attention to more interesting things. The balance varies from different situations, and Sutcliffe points out if the operation is more work goal oriented, it should require more skilled operation and efficiency. While if the operation is more educational oriented, it should require more interaction lead to engagement.
Okay, now we are going to talk about the user experience design process. So in this monograph, we were introduced to some of the UE design processes, and well, most of them are pretty like most of the HCI students know about them. So of course, there are scenarios, personae, storyboards, and prototypes. Like these are some of the most important steps you have to go through to actually design a interface that actually focuses on the experience. Because if you don't go through them, you don't actually know like what the users are uh, going for or like what they want. So in this monograph, we kind of go step by step through all of them. So yeah, let's go. First, we have the scenarios. Scenarios are specific, realistic description of the user experience. Guide it guides the thought and supports the reasoning of the user, and it contextualizes the information for interpretation of user requirements and priority. So how scenarios work is we think about a like a scenario, what the user may go through, what type of use cases might give born to, what type of process they go through, and like what their end result is. In this monograph, we have an example of a person, Emma. So Emma is doing a biology project on the impact of living condition on health in Stocksbridge. So the flow of finding information we find in this scenario is she surfs web to find the Stocksbridge Authority website, Over there, she would like to find the statistics about health and lifestyle and some sort of like link between them. And she also finds out that like heart disease is one of the largest single causes of death in UK. After finding all of this, like going through this whole process, she finds that like she has some knowledge about how the heart works from her biology class. And she also realizes that even though she went through all of this, she doesn't know how heart disease is caused, nor why the causes might linked to smoking or poor exercise. So from this scenario, we find that she cannot find the links to the information she was looking for. So this is one of the use cases that gave birth to. So if we are making something for Emma, we have to consider that like what processes she went through and what she was looking for in the first place. So yeah, that's how scenario works. One of the cons of scenario is there are biases towards exceptional and rare events. So if someone is creating a scenario in their head and they might think about a specific or special case, which may not happen to most of the people. So yeah, there are biases towards it, but overall, it's a very good idea to actually create a scenario. So the developer knows that what they're going for. I'm sorry. Of course, there is personae. The personae are character sketches of typical users and user roles. It gives context to how user base is going to be. More personae can empower design imagination. So why are personae needed? So the main reason they are needed is to understand what type of user base we are going for, like the demography, what they actually want, how they are going to react to the product, and so on. In, in this monograph, we have the high school student who is 16. Um, yeah, I'm sorry about that. So they came from a well-to-do background. So yeah, they came from a well-to-do background. They are motivated at school and so on. So this kind of gives us the context of what type of user we are going for our specific product. So persona is always important because like unless you do not know what type of user base you're going for, or like what type of user roles are there going to be, you don't actually know how the product is going to end up. So yeah, and of course, one of the important design process is storyboards. So in storyboards, we actually create like put together scenario and user like persona and see how they work. Like in this example, we have a medical app and we have decided what the app is going to look like, what type of like functions they are going to have, and so on. So storyboards are like the initial outcomes of a design. Like that's something you were thinking and like you just put them together and you discuss with others like, is it something we're going for, and so on. This is also referred to as like design sketches. So yeah, this is the initial step, and this is the first time you actually can think about like whether it's going to work for the specific persona we're going for, and whether it fulfills all the scenarios that we thought about. And of course, the final process is prototype. Well, it's not the final process, but it's the final process of a design, because like afterwards it's going to be reiterated again and then again. So prototypes can be like in different representations, like design representations. Like there can be mock-ups, partial software implementation, all the results from the creative design process. So when we are like thinking about all the scenarios and persona and putting them together in our design, that's what the prototype looks like. It illustrates the concrete aspect of a design. There are variation of techniques in prototypes. um, it can be like there can be different type of medias that are used, like it can be a video, it can be a like software, like pre-made pre-alpha software. There can be differences in cost, like someone can do a paper prototype which is pretty popular, and there is the fidelity and extent to the representation of the intended design. So yeah, prototypes can be anything as long as they are like interactive, and the interactivity can come from like Wizard of Oz process, or even like you know a mock-up software. But these are very important processes to go through to actually build something, and this kind of gives us the idea of how the product is going to look like to a user. So this is the summary of how the user experience design process goes. Like at first we have the concept terms of reference. We do a requirement and domain analysis. We create our scenarios and we think about the personae. We go through our initial design. In the design, we can do some like mock-ups or storyboards and think about whether it's going to work or not. And with each of the iteration, we kind of change the design exploration. And after we are done, we do a prototype. And of course, that's not the end of the process. In the prototype, we find out more improvements and then so on. And we keep up the evaluation. And at one point, when the users, or at least the people who are studied, are more or less satisfied with it, that's when we know that our design process went through. So this is one of my favorite parts of the monograph. So they were thinking about what type of design could look like. And on the left side, we have the storyboard. We are thinking that like player one is going to experience it in this way. We have a special sketch of how it's going to look like. And honestly, when I was going through it, I just thought about the game Metal Gear Solid, and I feel like it's a very I know that level, and um, like how it felt like to me is like on the left side we have the initial sketch of how the level design is going to look like, and on the right side we have the end product. And honestly, Metal Gear Solid is one of the most influential video games in the PlayStation 1 generation. And I think that if the creators didn't go through the whole sketch process, they wouldn't be able to come up with the end product, which was phenomenal at that time. So now we are going to talk about what type of design principles and guidelines are there. There are ways to create some sort of different feelings towards your design. So now we are going to discuss about like how selecting and designing media for mood and arousal, attract and persuade, emotional effects, attract attention, aesthetic appeal are going to work. We're going to go through them step by step. So yeah, for mood and arousal, there are like dynamic media. Video and speech actually cause more arousal and static compared to static images or texts. In a website, whenever you see a static image or text, it doesn't um, like create any sort of like arousal in you. It's more like, okay, that's static, I don't care as much. But like if it has a like if it moves, it makes you feel special. Okay, so just to put things in context, most of the stuffs talked about in this monograph are from 2007. Many things have changed over time, but yeah, many of those are still relevant even now. So yeah, just putting it out there. There are natural images like landscapes versus unusual objects. So the monograph states that like if an object used in the website or whatever product you're using has some sort of like abstract objects, it creates arousal in you. But landscapes actually makes you feel calmer. And yeah, there are studies that show that like landscapes do make you feel more calm rather than unusual or abstract objects. The sounds of nature, like the wind in the tree or water flowing, makes you feel more calm compared to racing cars, which creates arousal in you. There can be like unusual and challenging images, which creates arousal in you rather than comforting pictures. The depth of field. So these days, most of the things we see online or whatever are kind of more or less 3D, but back then there was a distinguish between like 2D versus 3D. But yeah, and oddity, how odd the object looks like, kinda gives you more arousal and like makes you more attracted to it. Um, so yeah, there is ways to attract and persuade. So photographs of people, especially if it's a face of their if it's their face and it's looking at you, it creates more it has more chance of attracting your attention. The faces of average people and baby faces also create like grab more of your attention. We are very susceptible to large eyes effects of young animals as exploited by Disney cartoons. Like on the right side, you can see the original version of Lion King and the remake version of Lion King. The main reason the um, remake version is not as beloved as the original is because they tried to make it photorealistic, and that didn't attract people as much as it did to people who watched the original. And of course, polite phrases like thank you or like please and all of those actually um, persuade you way more than any other type of terms, even though most people actually just ignore the terms and conditions. So for emotional effects, there there are other ways for there are steps you can use for emotional effects. Dangerous and threatening episodes like gory images actually makes you feel scared or like not feel emotionally okay compared to pleasant images, which makes you feel more calm. So that's one of the steps most of the news outlets use these days to grab your attention, and because like they usually start with gory details rather than pleasant images, which I don't know why started. Characters such as like well dressed versus disfigured actually makes a difference whether you feel good or bad about it. Like for example, our hockey bird mascot actually makes us feel much good, or when we are at the football events, whenever the hockey mascot shows up, we feel more excited. But if we see some sort of like disfigured person or anything, we do not feel as good about it. So that is that actually shows the significance between like characters, like whether they're well dressed or whether they're good looking cute looking mascots or whether they're disfigured. The dialogue, well, speech is one of the normal ways of communication, and the tone of voice actually makes a difference. Like, uh, if a interface is talking nicely to you, like for example, Siri is super nice to you, and it actually makes you feel more welcome. But like if Siri was actually using a threatening tone, you wouldn't feel more as inclined to use her as much you use her now. And of course music, we know that music can create different emotional effects on us. Like calm music makes us calm, but like metal, well, that's out for that's for out for debate, like whether metal makes you feel calm or more agitated, but it differs from person to person. But of course music creates emotional effects on you. How to attract attention. There can be use of dynamic media, and there are visual alliances. Like for example, this is the webpage of Persona 5 Royal, which came out this year. It is a remake of the game Persona 5, and we can see that like it actually grabs the attention of you with the colorful characters, with the moving, well, not moving, but more like visual effects and all of those. And Persona 5 actually attracted the mainstream attention compared to any other persona before it, just because of its specific visual style. So the dynamic media and the visual salience actually made a difference in terms of marketing a video game. For aesthetic appeal, there are some rules how to use color. And like for example, one should not be using more than 2 or 3 fully saturated intense color. The use of yellow is silent for alerting. Red, green have danger, safety, positive, negative association, which kind of makes me question why this specific website was considered a good design back then, because it hurts my eye and it's not very user friendly, I feel like. And most of the people who have color blindness will not be able to use this website. But I don't actually understand why this was considered a good idea. But yeah, what do you all think? You can actually discuss it in the upcoming discussion. And there is the gestalt effects. We can use closure, good continuation, similarity, proximity, pregnance, symmetry, and figure ground for aesthetic appeal. And these are some well used methods to actually make something aesthetic. Like for example, whenever a subject is circular, we think that that object is um, complete for some reason. And with similarity, we can actually group them together even though there is no specific distinguishment between them. But yeah, gestalt effects is a very nice way to actually design the aesthetics. Of course, there are depth of field, use of shape, and visual structure and organization to make something appealing. For example, the BBC News website has been considered one of the best websites of all time, at least back then in 2007. And they actually make the like newses separated with visual structure and organization, and it's much easier to find out whatever you are looking for in the website. So yeah, they made use of all of these specific steps, and it made it more um, like aesthetically appealing, at least back then. So yeah, those were the steps we have for our aesthetic appeal. These are the references we have used. So this week we are going to judge whatever webs like apps were chosen in the pre-presentation, and we are actually trying to discuss whether the participants actually um, yeah, sorry. This week we are actually going to create our own version of appendix. So if you went through the monograph, you have noticed that there are appendix A, where the author Sutcliffe actually judged many of the websites um, based on the design principles he has mentioned. And this time around in appendix B, which we are creating, we are going to judge apps, because apps are more popular nowadays rather than websites. And we are looking forward to your input in this discussion. So yeah, that's all for me. I hope you learned something new today.